All right. Hello, everyone. Back at it again. Round two, converting Laravel Dusk to the Pest Browser Tests. I did a little bit of research yesterday. Let's bring up some code here. I did a little bit of research yesterday on kind of these tasks that we roughly outlined. So let me just kind of like bring this in a little bit. So yeah, I think here's kind of the gist of what this is what seems to be installed. I kind of chatted with Nuno a little bit. He showed me kind of the secret, not yet launched, kind of V4 page for Pest. So here's kind of what I took from that. Here's what you would need to get the Pest browser tests running. These are the dependencies, right? So we outlined yesterday, we need to make a couple tasks. That's what I want to focus on today. I just want to kind of crank down through as many of these tasks as we can. I think definitely these first three tasks. And if we get far enough, I'm going to go about 45 minutes. If we get far enough, we'll see maybe about converting the skeleton. I think we could probably, as I noted yesterday, I think we could probably leverage some of the stuff that's already in the pest converter to get this done. So I might just kind of get my head around that so I can process things on the back burner. That is an excellent skill, by the way. And actually to the point of the title of this stream, I've been kind of naming these streams silly things. So this one's called Divide and Conquer. There's a lot of tasks to do here, right? There's a lot of things to do here. And sometimes when you're coding, especially starting on a new project, there's a lot of different strategies to kind of gain momentum, right? Taylor talks about one that I think is pretty good and I use sometimes. He kind of jumps in and does the hardest thing first, right? He kind of gets over that intimidation of like what could not work, right? Because if you're going to fail, let's fail fast, right? So that's kind of his approach, is like tackle the biggest things, see how it goes, get that proof of concept going. Don't go do all the easy stuff you can do. Some people, that gains momentum, but it's better kind of like from a time perspective. If your time is kind of super valuable to you, which time is the most valuable thing to me, that's a good approach because I want to fail as fast as possible. If something's not going to work, I want to know it as soon as I can so I can just, quit, pivot, whatever you want to call it, do something else. So another approach is divide and conquer. So that's my typical approach, is like, here it is. I've kind of divided all this up into like, here's all the little like piecemeal tasks, and I'm gonna go in and tackle it. And so from kind of Taylor's approach, starting with the hardest thing, this would probably be the hardest thing. But I do believe that most of that is done. So that's why I'm not going to use that particular strategy. I'm just going to divide and conquer. So today we're just going to hack down these lists one at a time, right? So the sub point I was going to get at is that if one of these is hard, I like to kind of just take a look at it. I like to kind of spike on it, is what I call it. I'm not actually going to go in there and necessarily write code. I might just write some pseudocode. I might just get in there and spend 10 minutes clicking around the code and just getting a feel for it, right? Like let it soak up. Because we're all developers. And, as humans, whoops, let's turn off my notifications from my family there. Do not disturb. All right, anyway. Sorry, Mom. I'll text you back later. Anyway, the point I was making was that, as developers and as humans, our brains is a multiprocessor, right? We might want to focus on one thing, but our brain's doing a lot, autonomously a lot. And some of it, we're thinking about. And as developers, I think if you soak up, if you give your brain a little bit of a taste, if we give our developer's brain a taste, what I've found for me is that a lot of the times that kind of keeps working on a sub process, right? And there's a background task in the back of my mind that's kind of thinking about the code that I looked at and how it might all fit together. And I've learned to leverage that over the years, is the point. So, you've got kind of fail fast, you've got start with the hardest thing, proof of concept, divide and conquer. You got these different strategies. But one of kind of the sub strategies is sometimes it's okay to just kind of aimlessly dabble and then back away. Don't force yourself to come up with a solution right there in that sitting, you know. This kind of is the strategy of like rubber ducking, right? Or take a walk, or, you know, take 5 minutes. All of this is the same thing. Allow your mind to just catch up. You know, the human brain's a very powerful thing, and, you know, use it, right? Give it time. Kind of to the point yesterday. Give things time. Okay, anyway, initial 5-minute tangent. Let's get back to the code. Hey Jeffrey, how's it going? All right, yeah, and hit me up in the chat, people. Let's see. Try to get these a little more interactive. We had some good numbers yesterday, like 400 simultaneously views. That's pretty good for me, a just kind of aimless streamer. So, okay, I think the thing to do here, honestly, is probably just to copy. I probably just want to copy this pest converter folder and then just dump out the stuff, because the check requirements, the dependencies, the copy tests, all of this stuff, I'm probably going to do in this one as well. So I'm just going to copy that folder, bring it over. It's going to make the namespace, all that stuff easier. So let me just do that. Let's just do some file system manipulation here. So let me get over in source, tasks. That was actually in PHP. I'm going to copy pest converter, bring it over to Laravel, Dusk. Oh, we already have some Dusk converter stuff. So let me actually expand the pest converter, and let's just take what we want. Check requirements, cleanup, copy test, dependencies. We already have miscellaneous. That's fine. Let's borrow this test runner. That feels like we talked about yesterday, potentially wanting to change the test runner, convert any test runners right there. Okay, so we're after this one. Okay, so I think this will give us a bit here. I'm going to try to copy those. I don't know if Command C works. Let's try it. Command V. Yay. All right, copy these over, and then let's fix the name here. So this actually needs to be Laravel Dusk converter is the appropriate path, only under this namespace. We're not going to trust PHP Storm after yesterday's renaming issues. Okay, I think this gives us a good start. Let's go back now and dump these in. Okay, so if pest is installed, ensure it's v4. Okay, so this is kind of just like a checking of the requirements. So we're going to say shift tasks Laravel Dusk converter dependencies. I think we said dependencies. Or no, is it requirements? Requirements class. All right. Does that not exist? Oh, check requirements. Why did I not get autocomplete? Check requirements. There it is. Kaboom. All right. Let's go fill this out. Okay, we can see here that shift as kind of a code base, again, as kind of a PHP unit. Sorry, not PHP unit. As a PHP library. This is not a Laravel application, but because I work on Laravel applications, we're going to see a lot of the similar patterns in here. So for example, I have this shift facade, and this shift facade has, think of it like carbon a little bit. While it's a facade, as far as the Laravel design pattern, how that goes, or the general design pattern of facades, it's much more akin to carbon. It just has 100 methods in there. There's no rhyme or reason. They're not broken up necessarily. It's just like anything shift needs to do, it's a method on, this, and I hide it through a facade so it's easy, to test, right? I abstract it through a facade so it's easy to test. So, instead of file exists, there's shift file exists. So reading this out, basically what we're saying here is like, oh, okay, if you have PHP unit or something else, then okay, unmet shift requirement. Otherwise, read the composer file, see if you have PHP unit, make sure the version is, the certain number. Otherwise, throw the unmet requirement. So we don't need to worry too much about the file exists stuff. This is kind of a very specific PHP unit to pest converter. Remember, we copied this code to the pest converter. So this is making sure that you actually have PHP unit tests. So we don't need to worry about that part. All we're really trying to do here, and I have this in my paste buffer, all we're trying to do is see if it's installed, right? So if it's installed, and we need to ensure that it's v4. It's okay if pest is not installed. If it's not installed, we're going to add it ourselves. It's not a requirement. Again, it's not a requirement that you're already running pest. In isolation, we are going to simply swap your Dusk tests. We're going to leave otherwise we're going to leave your test suite, your application tests, not Dusk, not browser tests. We're going to leave those alone. So this is as unopinionated as you can get. All right. So with that said, let's see here. What do I want to do? What do I want to do here? This read composer file is actually a little bit old. It kind of just gives you like a raw array. I think I actually have a better composer reading model in modern Shift. So let's say composer equals composer. I think I have a composer. Illuminate, no, not illuminate support. Where is this? Models, composer config. There we go. Read, there we go. Cool. I think this, yes, it uses Shift, but it parses it into a model, or a DTO, if you will. It's a little more advanced than a DTO. DTOs are kind of dumb. This has stuff on it, right? So it parses it into, I think, a model is a better way to think of it. And now we're able to kind of do things with this in a more appropriate way. So what I want to do actually is say if composer, I think there's a has, there we go. And what's nice about this versus what I'm doing down here is I don't have to be so specific on require or require dev or whatever, right? I can just say, does this thing have, pest php / pest, right? If it doesn't even have that, then I'm going to return. And I think, again, I've added nice things. I thought I had missing, but I don't. But again, it just has a bunch of convenience methods. It holds the composer config in, kind of this object where it just makes it easier to work with instead of doing all this like low level stuff where it's like, take this, parse this version, get its constraint, read from the right thing. If we look at has, it basically just kind of figures out the type and tries to figure out, what's in there. And now I can call things like, give me the constraint, right? So the point here is it's basically the same code, but we're just going to write it a little bit more modern Shift kind of code style. So if we don't even have pest, then just return. There's no more we need to do in this specific task because, again, it's not a requirement that you had pest. But if you do, it needs to be v4. So what we can do here is we can say version, I think we have a compare, or there's like a greater than, yeah, is greater than or equal to. And what we can do is now get composer constraint for that package. So we know the package exists now. Again, doesn't matter if it's required. I mean, it should be required dev, but if for some reason it's require, this is gonna help pick it up. And then now we'll say 4.0, right? So sorry, this is actually is less than. Well, we could say greater than or equal to. That's fine. Let's continue with our guard clause kind of approach. Otherwise, we're going to raw throw an unmet shift requirement. And And then this is basically, what were we saying before? I just kind of want to match. I don't think this error message is actually used, but let's just kind of keep the bit here. All right, so we'll get composer, constraint, pest. Cool. All right. Oh, did I write that wrong? Hey, Nuno, thanks. All right. Sorry. Look at that. Boom. I keep typing PHP. Pest PHP, pest. Thank you, Nuno. Okay, so just to I'm going to do the future tasks a bit faster, but again, this is an isolated kind of atomic bit of logic for each one of the shifts. We're just getting started here. First thing we want to do is just check the requirements, right? If you're not running pest v4, then it doesn't matter kind of that we convert all your stuff. Now, from a DX perspective, I may end up taking this off, right? I may end up taking this off because it's very easy to just say, hey, go ahead and convert your stuff, but this isn't going to run until you're on pest v4. That is an option. But again, other shifts do this. The UI will pick up on this unmet shift requirement. This throws a specific exit code with this message, and that gets bubbled back up to the UI on laravelShift.com. So I think it's better to have, the experience isn't just like your shift fails and you have no information. It's going to say specifically, hey, go upgrade to v4 and then come back and rerun this shift, right? It kind of separates the concerns. So while I could give you this, I never really want to give you a PR that's just not going to work, right? That would look bad from a brand perspective on Shift. I think it's a much lesser evil to say, hey, you didn't meet the requirements, and just be upfront about the requirements, than giving them something where someone doesn't realize or they miss this. A lot of people don't read the PR comments that Shift like meticulously leaves for you. They just kind of download and go, which is cool. That it works so well, but I don't want some dev banging their head against the wall because they missed the requirement of Pest v4, right? So I think this is just a nice little guarded way to do that, get the ball rolling. So again, read in the composer config file, make sure, or if they don't have Pest, no big deal, we're gonna add it ourselves. Again, we don't have the pre-existing requirement, but if you do have the Pest dependency in your project, then make sure that its constraints greater than or equal to v4, and ultimately if it's not, then we're gonna throw an exception. So that gets bubbled back up to laravelshift.com to say, oh, hey, you said you were running v4, but you actually weren't. So go fix that. Okay, so that one's checked off. Okay, so next we want to mess with the dependencies. And basically that's gonna be all of this, I think. Dependencies, in this case, they're typically just composer dependencies. But in this case, they can also be the npm dependencies. So let's jump in here, and as we can see here, add pest plugins, Laravel dependencies, blah, 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 blah. So a lot of different things. This actually task is a little more complex because it breaks up, all the things. So here we have that composer config. We do individual stuff. We kind of pipeline some stuff with composer here, and then we ultimately write it back to update what we've done. So let's take a peek at what we need here. Now again, we're not upgrading Pest itself. So because of that, we probably don't need so many of these different checks. We're not worried about PHP. Again, the assumption is you're already running 8.3 or all the things you need to do to be able to run Pest v4. That's not the responsibility of this particular shift. So what we care about is, adding Playwright, which is kind of down here. We care about adding this Pest plugin browser test to the dev dependencies with the appropriate version. And we care about removing Dusk, and if necessary, adding Pest PHP Pest. Cool. So let's do that. Let's just break these up. Again, divide and conquer. Let's just turn this into real code. So let's say remove Dusk. we'll say add pest and plugins. That's fine. We can do that if necessary. And then here we'll say add playwright. All right, so let's make these. So we're going to remove Dusk. So we're going to jump down in here, and all of these are going to be void. And we'll simply, even though this is just a one-line method, I kind of like breaking that up. That's just like a kind of a small thing that I do in here. So this is Laravel Dusk. So see you later, Dusk. So again, it's just one line, but I kind of like, if I have a more complicated task, I like kind of seeing at a high level, what is this task going to do individually, right? So again, I just kind of keep breaking it up, and I kind of abstract it into these hopefully well-named methods, right? So even though this is just a one-liner, like it kind of reads a little higher level than this, a little more human than this. So we're going to remove Dusk. We're going to add pest in the plugins. Let's jump down here. So we'll say if it doesn't have pest PHP, pest whatever, then we're going to add this. Now, this is where it gets the shift. It determines that latest version, and then it adds it to composer require. I think we could probably, I think for now we could probably just do this. For now. Again, we may end up bumping that, but I'm okay just kind of hard coding this for now. So basically we're immediately going to say, okay, if you don't have pest, then we're going to add it to your dev dependencies, right? And again, we're not going to change it otherwise, because we've already confirmed in the previous step that you have 4 or higher. So if you don't have it, we're going to add it. And then if you do have it, then all we need to do is this part. So all we need to do is this part. So we'll do that, and it needs to be an add, whoops, add, oh, we got add dev, nice. All right, cool, add dev, I didn't know. That must have been added after the fact. Nice. So let's get rid of that. I like this a lot better. Okay, so if you don't have pest, then add it. If you do have pest, then all we need to do here is just add the pest plugin bit. Now, I don't know what the constraint is on that off the top of my head. So, Nuno, if you're still in, come to my rescue again. Let me know what the constraint is for this pest plugin thing. I'm going to assume 4. I'm just going to throw 4 out there. It's probably not right, but I'm going to assume 4. Okay, what else do we need to do? I think that's it. Oh no, we need to do some of the, we got to do some of the NPM stuff now. That's going to be a little bit uglier. Okay, let's get rid of all this other code that we're not using anymore. See ya. All right. So now we need to add playwright. And this will also be a void. So let's say add Pest Browser Test dependencies. Browser testing, I think. And actually, I think nowadays I actually put this a little higher just so I can see it. So on the commit, a task, if a task returns a commit object right here, so if it returns a commit object, then Shift, the kind of engine, the runner, the higher level Shift application, knows to call get add and then do a get commit -m with this message, right? You can also pass it a file if I want like a really big commit message with a lot of detail. I used to do those a lot more than I do now. Normally now a good name, not whip, a good name for the commit is fine. But anyway, the point is tasks can return a commit, and if they do, then that's kind of what triggers the engine to wrap everything up. Okay, so we remove Dusk, we add pest if necessary, we require this plugin here, And then now we need to do kind of this playwright stuff. Now again, I may need to adjust that, but that's going to be a pretty obvious error when I go to run this. So I'm not too worried about what the exact constraint is there, but I will leave a little to-do tag here. Get the correct constraint. There we go. Okay, so let's bring this code a little closer to home, divide and conquer in here. So yes, we do need to add this to the dev dependencies. So this goes in dev dependencies. And then we need to make a note that they need to run npx playwright install. So somewhere I don't have a package. I don't have a package JSON config the way I do have like this composer config. So, and we actually don't need to pass it composer. So I am gonna tidy this up and I'll drop this. And let's bump this down here. There we go. Okay, so what do I want to do here? I want to add this to my dev dependencies. Now I definitely do this somewhere else in Shift. So I'm just going to go borrow some code. Here we go. Add Vite. All right. Determine type npm. Where does npm come from? Let's borrow this Vite thing. This feels pretty good. Where's inertia called? There we go. Oh, here we go. Read package JSON. Great. Okay, cool. Perfect. And we got a comment. Excellent. Let's just borrow that code. That's exactly what we need. Minus the inertia part. Okay, so we're going to read in npm. And what does this fail? No, it gives us an array. I'm just thinking if you don't have package JSON, like I kind of want to skip this part. But we're going to leave it alone. Okay, so let's add in this. This is kind of a similar low-level test to what we were doing with Composer. But again, it's lower level, so we're having to kind of mess with the array. Okay, so if npm dev playwright tests is empty, then we're going to want to actually add it, right? So then this is basically as simple as saying npm dev dependencies and then just set it to what we need. So let's just set it. All right, so we did that, and now we need to write it. So we'll say, I think there's like a shift right. There it is, npm. Cool. Okay, so simple as that. Read the package JSON file. I should probably wrap this in a check to make sure that you actually have a package JSON file. We can do that. But basically, if playwright's not set, yeah, if not is set playwright. Again, I don't know why you would have playwright as a raw dependency, but I do think sometimes people kind of mess up their dev dependencies versus dependencies, especially when it comes to npm. It's a little confused. It's more confusing than Composer, right? Or it feels more confusing sometimes. So I'm going to leave this for now. This is kind of the thing with Shift. It's very much 80-20 rule. Most people are going to have these dev dependencies correct, right? Because they're either provided for you or they're documented in the install guide, right? It's documented to make this a dev dependency, or that happens automatically for you when you run, some of these other commands potentially. So following the 80-20 rule, like that's kind of how I write the initial shift. And then I'll get some support emails or community feedback, or I run it on my own projects even, and I catch some of these boundary cases. Oh, I should be more lenient here, I got to double check this kind of thing, right? And so I'll go back and add it. So the point here is like, if I need to sniff out which dependency, maybe you already have this, but it's, it's under dependencies, not dev dependencies, right? Like if someone reports that in a future support email, I'll just come in here, I'll update the test, and I'll change it, and I'll push it out. So, to the divide and conquer, again, like, I'm not trying to conquer everything right now. I'm not trying to conquer the whole world, right? Right now, I'm just starting with this little plot of land, and I'm just trying to make sure I got that under control. Don't let the project get away from you, right? It can feel really big if I start testing for all of the possible boundaries. What if you're using yarn, or bun, or what the fuck ever? Like, I don't care about all those right now, right? We're just going to focus on package JSON dev dependencies because that's how it should be installed. So, following the 80-20 rule, I think this is good enough for kind of the initial beta launch of this. Okay, now we need a comment. This will be a create info comment. And what we need to tell them now is basically that, yes, we installed this, but they're going to need to run this npx playwright install command, because this is actually what seems to pull down like the Chrome driver and all these things based on your actual system. So while the dependency will be in there from a project perspective to have and use Playwright, you still, just like Dusk install, like you still need to download, or I think it's like Dusk detect driver or something. There's still something you're going to have to run on your system no matter what to get Playwright to actually run, and that's this. So I want to educate them. This is a chance to leave a comment, these nice curated things about Shift, to leave a comment that, hey, here's how this works and here's what you need to do. All right. Hey, Mateus, how's it going? Hey, Samuel. Okay, so again, just to kind of get this started, let's say something like Pest Browser Testing is built on top of Playwright. While Shift added this as an npm dependency, you will need to run this to install the necessary we'll just call them drivers for now for your local system. Okay, so again, once I see that wording in a PR, I can tweak it more, but it's grammatically correct and complete as far as like the general idea of what's going on here. So a little bit educational of like what's going on, and then the action to be taken. That's typically the format I like to follow here. So a little bit educational, here's what you got to do. There's a little bit of education, tiny bit, and then here's what you got to do. Okay, I think we're good here. I don't see any, what do we have here? Warnings, 2 warnings. Besides logs, never, okay, so yeah, that's fine. All right, yeah. Actually, Pint will pick that up for us. So let's just run Pint dirty. Awesome. So if we go back here, we should be all green. Excellent. So just some typos, I suppose. Typo in the word pest PHP. Yeah. Okay, so there you have it. We cranked these 2 out. Awesome. What else do we need to do here? I suppose I should probably, how are we on time? We're 34 minutes. I was gonna say I should backfill some tests for these, but they're pretty lightweight. This wouldn't be like a good testing example to follow on. I think we're going to get some really good testing examples down here. So I will backfill the tests for these simple tasks off stream. I think what we should do with the last several minutes that we have is, again, let's get a feel for kind of how we might leverage this. And I already kind of had this on a sub process from yesterday's stream. I didn't look at any code, but as I remembered how as I wrote this question in the back of my mind, again, it was kind of like, how could we leverage those tasks? And my brain started remembering how the pest converter was actually built, and I think there might be a way. So what I want to do is I want to go see if what my brain came up with, you know, in the background, I want to go see if that might actually work. And what I think, let me dictate the, let me share my hypothesis, right? So the hypothesis is, I think what the pest converter does in copy tests is it takes all of your tests within your testing folder and it gives them a .pest extension. And then future tasks in the pipeline work strictly against that temporary .pest extension file to upgrade them and make them, to convert them to pest syntax, right? To convert them to the functional programming syntax instead of the class-based syntax, right? Not functional programming, but convert them to functions instead of the class-based syntax, right? To rip them out of the PHP unit skeleton. That's what I think happens. And if that happens, then really I would just make my own copy tests task that only does Dusk browser tests, gives them that extension, and then I could reuse all of these in my, pipeline to get them how I want them to be. And if that's the case, then this part's very, very easy. This part's just as easy as basically scanning the Dusk browser test folder, right? Or the test browser folder to get all the Dusk tests. So let's go see if that's true real quick. And if it's not, then I'll leave it on the back burner. If it is, then we know exactly what we're going to jump into tomorrow. Okay, so what does this task do? Copy tests. Okay, so it determines the test path. It finds all star.tests in the test paths. No PHP unit stuff found. Okay. Then what does it do? Okay, it loops over them. It makes sure that they're a class. Fine. It makes sure they're a class. Because you might have a trait or something else in there that's not a test. It replaces them. It rips out their namespace and it rips out framework, PHP unit framework attributes. I don't really know why I'm ripping out specifically at PHP unit attribute imports. I understand that Pest doesn't use those. It's interesting that it's doing that in the copy tests. Just randomly, I don't remember why I did that, but it's tested, it works. I'm not going to question it at the moment. And then look, it puts them with the .pest extension, as I thought. Awesome. My memory's good. Okay, this determines the test path. We won't necessarily need that because by convention, I guess you could move your browser tests, but by convention, Dusk works by putting your tests under browser. So again, following my 80-20 rule, I'm just going to assume, I'm not going to determine any testing paths. I'm just going to assume that your, tests are under test browser. So I don't need to necessarily do this part per se. But this is putting those as .pest. So this seems to be doing what I think it's doing. So now the question is, if I go down and look at this lifecycle methods and test methods and data providers, if I look at some of these other things in the pipeline, do those strictly operate off of .pest extensions? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Okay, this actually dumps off. Okay. Oh, I got a shared data provider bit. Okay, that's fair. Okay, so I'll have to see where the shared data providers come from, but let's take helper methods. Okay, .pest, great. Class to script, .pest, all right, cool. Okay, remove global imports. I may not need to do this necessarily. This operates off of what was in the test path. Now, again, I could share test path to be test browser. Expectations. Where does it actually put it back? Okay, here's all the expectations that get converted. Fine. In the test path. That's interesting that those operate on test path and not star. But whatever. I'll leave it alone. Optimize uses. So somewhere these get named back. Maybe cleanup. Yeah, I don't know. Test runner. One of these puts them back. It must be this. It must be replace originals. There it is. Replace original. Okay, so find any of the star thing, move it to the thing, move it to its same name without .pest. Okay. So long story short, my theory is true. If I make my own copy tests, which we have, if I make my own copy test class and have it strictly say that the test folder, the shared path for the test folder is test/browser, and then in there I just rename any class to, star.whatever.pest, right? Then I could reuse, whatever I need here. I could reuse this to ensure that the Dusk stuff was converted. And then my goal would be to convert, what I'm doing here is I'm actually converting to the expectation API. That's nice for the pest converter, but that's where this would come in. I would actually convert from the Dusk API to the Pest Browser Testing API. And then finally swap any core files. Whew. So back to kind of Taylor's strategy of starting with the hardest thing. That was the hardest thing. And we realized that it's actually already been built. And we could leverage it by actually having this strictly focus on test browser. And again, 80/20, I may sniff that out and make it more dynamic in the future. But if we go look, I'm sure if we go look at the install, bit for Dusk, I know that within a Laravel application, that's where Dusk install puts things, is right here. So that's my testing path. I'll share it. All the other things now, even in the pest converter, I can now reuse those tasks because I've configured them the way I care, right? So we can just leverage the shared data path. We could say no Dusk tests found. We'll loop over each. We'll make sure that it's a class. I'm not gonna do that right now because I don't know why I did that. We could just kill the namespace because we know we won't need it. I'm still. So what does this do? This takes. I'm just kind of curious what this does. This finds the class. This finds the class signature. If it doesn't find one, it continues. So it finds a class signature. The assumption is that if it finds a class signature within this folder, it's a test case. That's kind of the assumption here. There are boundary cases to that, but that's the assumption. And then we basically take the segment of that. We take the header out of that file. Oh, we take to that. That gives us the file header. And we start ripping out the namespace and all of the attributes. I don't like that it rips out the attributes. I may go back and change that in the pest converter. It feels like, again, we're getting a bit tangential, but it feels like one of these other things should probably do that. Anyway. So yeah, I think this probably shouldn't happen. I think what I'm probably just going to do for now and see how it ends up working is basically, yeah, I'm basically just going to say get file, test, segment. I don't think we need any of that. I think what we really just want to do here is change this. I'm just going to change this quickly, and we'll drive this out with tests, but I'm just going to change this quickly to file, yeah, get file contents, and we'll change this to contents. We actually don't care about the matches anymore. We only care that it's found. And if it's found, then we would put contents in there. There we go. That feels better. And then let's kill this. See ya. We don't need ya. Okay, so what we'll do here is, for now, 80-20 rule, we're just going to hard code it to be the test browser test. That's our testing paths. We don't care about any other path. We're not trying to convert anything else. That's our testing path. We'll find any star.test file within the test browser folder. We'll kind of log out if there's no Dusk test found. That just kind of helps me from a support perspective. If someone's like, hey, I ran this thing, it didn't do anything. Oh, no Dusk tests are found. Tell me about how you wrote your Dusk tests. Oh, I put them in some other folder. Oh, okay. I'll make some adjustments. Otherwise, we'll loop through there, and any class that distinguishes that that's a test case will basically get a .pest extension to now be converted to the test format instead of the PHP unit class skeleton, which hopefully means we'll be able to reuse a lot of this stuff. We'll see about that. But that's kind of how this will work. Obviously, we took out some stuff from the header that we may need to fix, but that feels like something I might actually end up doing in the pest converter anyway, because I feel like all this should do is copy tests, and it was actually copying and manipulating tests, and that doesn't really fit its name. So I'd rather just make something else that's like trim header or something, or trim imports, or remove namespace or whatever. I'd rather make a task that does that. So let's finish up. Let's run dirty again. Where are we here? So right now, what do we do? Okay, so we modified the Dusk converter because we actually have some stuff here now. So we're filling out some tasks. We're getting to the meat of it. So we'll be able to do the hard stuff tomorrow, I think. And then we copied over these files, some of which are filled in, some of which are still empty. No problem. We'll get to them. Okay, so let's do a git add. We'll do a git whip because we are all just a work in progress right now. And let me just push this on up to origin just in case I want to work on it on the laptop later. So I'm going to backfill tests for these. Maybe even a test for that. And then what we'll do is we'll write some real tests tomorrow to prove that kind of the skeleton of a sample Dusk test is getting manipulated and turned into this, right? That's kind of the goal. So we'll do that tomorrow. We'll see if we can actually copy over which pest converter stuff to get it to match, as best we can. And then Friday, hopefully, we'll work on converting the API. Because I think the rest of this is really just polish for the PR, like comments about the test runner. I think we're just going to be able to straight remove, the Dusk test base class. I don't see any issues. These are going to be very, very simple tasks, I think. So let's keep focusing on the meat now. So thanks, everybody, for joining live. I will see you tomorrow.